Well, welcome everyone to our post-Thanksgiving week live session. We've had a lot of discussion already around, let's see, Etheridge had a smoked turkey, we had some turkey pizzas, we had a former student that raised his own turkey that was 47 pounds. We've got a lot of turkey talk going. So tonight we are going through this kind of intersection between the site and the facility into the equipment. So we have Thad Fisco with us tonight from Portland Kettle Works, and I think I've shown you in our news page some of the systems at Brewing, and I'm not sure where else we've seen some systems, but some of my slides I have Portland Kettle Works materials in there, but he's often come to our live sessions and he's a great contributor.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, Thad. So I'm going to let Thad tell you a little bit about his world. He's involved with a lot of stuff besides Portland Kettle Works, but Kettle Works is a significant Portland equipment maker, so he can tell you a lot about that area, and also some of the questions that Juliet couldn't answer. He actually has the answers to those questions. So I'm going to give the mouse to Thad so he can drive his own slides.
Charge here. Good. So I'll give you a quick background on why I'm here and how I got here. I was in process engineering on the East Coast back probably 25 years ago, moved to Portland around 15 years ago, got into construction and development primarily, did a lot of rehab and adaptive reuse of buildings, not much in the new phases of construction, a little bit, but mostly adaptive reuse. Was involved in putting my first brewery experience about 10 years ago now on North William Street. We put in the Lompoc Brewery, subsequently put in a silo for him, and that business was going great right up until around the end of 2008, when there really wasn't any business in contracting or development anymore. So it took about a year and a half, 2 years to kind of figure out what to do, and I repurposed what was our architectural and structural steel shop to begin to make brewing equipment, which turned out to be really great. We were doing a little bit of brewing stuff. We kind of picked up some loose ends on it and decided in 2011 to go full bore. Now we've got around 70 breweries in operation all over the place, from South America up into Canada, all over the United States. We're actually working on some European deals now. So a lot of interest and a lot of success with what we're doing. So Portland Kettle Works, like I said, we began in 2011, and I'll start just kind of shooting through these slides for you. I imagine you guys maybe look at that video that we did. It gives you an idea of how our shop operates and what's going on there. We're a small shop, 25 employees. These are the things that I'm going to cover with you guys, and I'm going to kind of go a little bit quickly so we leave some time for questions. First off, kind of planning your brewery, selecting your equipment, and then we're going to talk specifically about hot side versus cold side and grain management. When we talk about equipment, we talk about those three elements primarily. Hot side is the brew house. That's where you're obviously heating up water, running it through your grain, getting your wort. Cold side is as soon as you leave that brew house and move through the plate chiller, get yourself into fermentation in bright tanks. I won't talk anything about after bright tanks. That's distribution, kegging, bottling, cans, whatever you do from there. And then grain management, which is always something that you want to consider when you're jumping into this business for sure. We'll have a quick discussion about efficiency and our ideas of efficiency in brewery management. Sort of a dense slide here. So I'm going to touch on the subjects that are light blue. I obviously walking in don't know exactly all the things that you guys have covered, but when I do a presentation like this, I like to kind of run through what all of the pieces are that are going to drive you to that final phase where you get to actually make beer. You guys, I know, are putting together your business plan and developing your concept. So what is your concept? Are you going to be a tap room, distribution brewery? Are you going to have a food element involved? Are you going to let somebody else deal with the food for you? All that stuff is very important right up front. It's one of the first questions that we ask people when they call us and they want to discuss brewing equipment with us is, how much beer do you want to make, which they usually don't know. So then we can take a step back and say, what's your idea? What's your dream? What do you see yourself doing in 3 years? Once you have that business plan, next big hurdle for you is to start looking for financing. Now, you may have that in hand. There's a lot of different sources for it. I'm just going to touch on it and tell you that that's obviously one of the first things that you need to do. You got to get over that hurdle and find the cash and make sure you've got enough money in there to operate your business for a little while you're getting started. Moving along, once you have your financing, you're sort of legit at that point. Okay, you've got cash. You're going to be looking for a space to put your brewery. Now you want to go back to your business plan and say, okay, what am I here? I'm going to be. Let's just take it for instance. We're going to be a tap room only. We're not going to serve any food in this particular instance. I want to have 50 seats. How many square feet do I need to make that happen? And you go to work and start hammering that out. I like to consult people to get yourself a real estate broker into that big difference between the two. You want to be able to explain your plan and your dreams to that broker so they can then explain it to your potential landlords. You might think that isn't a crucial piece of the pie, but landlords are picky about who they let in their buildings. If your broker can explain to a potential landlord or potential whatever it might be, it doesn't matter where it is, but the landlord exactly what your plan is going forward. A lot of landlords coming out of the box are going to be a little touchy about a brewery, unfortunately, but a good broker, if they can put the landlord's mind around the fact that a brewery is actually a traffic driver for their building or for really their whole neighborhood, as much as a bakery or a coffee shop, maybe even more than those, they can get really excited about it. So being able to put a good spin on your brewing operation to the people that it's going to go to is a super important piece of the pie. Next step that you're going to jump into once you have a landlord and you've got a like-minded decision landlord who's interested in having your space. The space works. You're going to go to negotiate your lease. Takes forever to do that. I say allow 60 days. I've seen them take even longer than that, and I'm speaking from experience as a developer. You get a couple of attorneys involved and 2 real estate brokers, and they can eat away time like it just doesn't even matter. So I like this part. Don't waste that time because you got your eye on your space. You can ask your prospective landlord or your future landlord for plans. If they don't have them, you can go into the space and make up drawings yourself. Start thinking about your layout for your brewery or whatever other elements you're going to have if you're going to put a kitchen in. And begin to negotiate with contractors, or at least get a couple contractors to come in and say, okay, this is my rough floor plan. This is what I'd like to do. Can you give me a budgetary estimate? You're going to vet your business plan at that point, which is a really important piece because now you have a piece of real estate that you really do need to work around. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to spend $100,000 on construction, you can get a legitimate quote on it that is going to be plus or minus 10% from a good contractor. Again, on the construction side, I would try and work with a commercial contractor, preferably somebody who knows something about process or brewery equipment. You can learn a lot about the contractors by having a conversation with them. Their subcontractors, even more than the contractor, your general contractor, are important to understand. You want to have subcontractors that know what they're doing inside that brewing environment. And if you're doing a commercial kitchen, for sure, just as much there. What we find at Portland Kettle Works is as soon as financing is secured and you move through the lease, within a few days of that lease getting signed, most business owners are buying their brewing equipment. And they're doing that because right now you're going to find in the industry that the lead time on equipment is anywhere from 6 to 8 months. That gives you ample time to go through permitting, construction, and have that equipment hit the ground kind of just about at the right point, depending on how much build out you have to do. If you're on a tighter time frame, things happen. There are sometimes people drop out of schedules or they move back, and you can be plugged into a manufacturer's schedule. But when in the manufacturing world, what you have to think from our standpoint is basically each brewery that we build, those people have bought our shop time, and we only have so much shop time to build their brewery, and we only have so much shop time overall. So once that little section's bought out, we can't do anything more with it unless somebody drops out of schedule and plugs someone else in. And literally, I'm sure that you probably heard that the lead times are super long at this point. Order the equipment, get your contractor on board. Those happen sort of at the same time. Okay.
So I should just say, so I think I posted these slides, or I will post these slides so that you can look at them more closely. I know it probably looks a little tiny, and you guys can blow this up by choosing different options of how you want this displayed. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So in partnering with an equipment manufacturer, I would point out some pretty important points. Understand what your manufacturer is going to provide for you, what their scope of services is. At Portland Kettle Works, we like to be involved early in the game. When you find your space, we want to be able to have that plan sent to us so we can begin to discuss how a brewery would lay out in there. Know what your ideas around how that brewery is going to lay out. If you want to have a brewery that's going to have an element of show to it, we're going to work around two different things. One is efficiency, because efficiency and having a lot of stainless steel and the glass don't always mix. So we work to balance the two and make sure that we get a layout that works great. A lot of people will, and new brewery owners will at this point possibly get a brewery consultant on board. They're great to have. The one caution that I would lay out there right from the get-go is that if you get a brewery consultant, have your brewer on board at the same time. Otherwise, what we have found is that sometimes the brewery consultant can drive the discussion down the road one direction, and as soon as the brewer is hired, you've gone too far, and it wasn't the direction the brewer wanted to go. So they have to back up and head another direction and sort of reassemble the brewery the way that the brewer envisions doing it. But a consultant and a brewer working together is a real powerful combination. Portland Kettle Works likes to kind of work as the consultant in some regard. We do a lot of layout. We do a lot of plans with clients. We help get through and over that hurdle of how you're going to work efficiently inside your building. Obviously, check references. Visit the manufacturer. I think that's super important. We love to have people come to visit us in Portland. We actually offer people, if they come to visit us, they have to fly here and they buy a system, we'll pay for their plane tickets. And when I say that world-class beer starts with a reliable partnership between the brewery and the manufacturer, I really do mean that. Our intent is for you guys to make the absolute best beer that you can make. And in commissioning a brewery and going through that process, once you've done it, you'll understand what I'm saying, because there's a lot to do, and there are a lot of conversations between your contractor, your subcontractors, and your manufacturing team to make sure that all the pieces come together correctly, so that you get a good, easy rollout when you get going. So then you're going to initiate your construction build out. Obviously, try and get a written, or I would say demand a written construction schedule from your contractor. All too many times what we find is people say, hey, we want our equipment dropped on site on this day, it has to be here, and that day rolls by and they are nowhere near ready. They can be months and months behind in their construction schedule. What I like to do when I talk to a contractor is say, hey, put us in the schedule for the date and hard tag that in there so that you know where that equipment is going to ship out of our shop. We're going to finish it. It's going to come at you. Be prepared to take it one way or the other, into the brewery or into storage, but it's going to have to go. So a written construction schedule, really important, and be clear with your expectations to your contractor. You're going to pay them a lot of money to do what they're supposed to do for you. as a contractor for a long time, clear expectations actually help them more than anything else. They know what it is that you want, and most of them will deliver. Once you finish up construction, or you get to the point in construction where you want the brewery equipment, you may not be done. You may be at a point where a wall is going to seal up or something's going to happen, and you're ready to take delivery of the brewery equipment. You get it on site, and then you can finish out the build out around the brewery. Generally, the brewing equipment, leaving time for soft opening of the brewery and delivery of the equipment in the construction schedule, you're going to want to try and get your brewery equipment about a month before construction completes. That way you can hopefully be up and brewing just as construction finishes, and you're going to go through your fixtures at that point. You're going to be at the painting stage, but you can be making beer at that point, so that in a couple of weeks when you open, you've got something on tap. A little bit of timing there that you want to just kind of keep your eye on. So the next stage is commissioning the brewery, and I know you guys probably can't read that, but I can barely read it. So every brewery is different. Steam brewery versus a direct fire brewery. The layout is different. The level of competency of your brewing crew, the build out that's been done, all those things have to meld when you commission the brewery. And it honestly, I mean, I've seen some breweries that come out really fast and brew great beers super rapidly, but an average, I would say, is like 6 months before a brewery really is starting to hit their stride, and they've got their equipment figured out, and they know the nuances of what they're doing, and there's no way to really get around that except to brew beer, find out what you like, what you don't like, move things around a little bit, change your process. Process in brewery is super important, and understand what the capabilities are that you have in-house. So there I say soft opening, allow yourself about 6 weeks after the brewery gets started up, and there you go, you're ready to take off. Okay, so real briefly, hot side is the brew house and the hot liquor system. Cold side, and we're going to go into these in more detail, is temperature regulation and cooling. So that's in your fermentation and bright beer tanks, and then your grain management side, which is taking possession of grain, milling it, mashing it in, and getting rid of it at the end of the day. So steam versus direct fire systems. Direct fire brew houses are heated by, in our systems, unless I'm going to stay away from the small 3 barrels and say 5 through 20 barrel systems are heated with it's akin to a hot air blower, but it's a super hot air blower. It blows flame inside of a contained firebox inside the system and wraps the flame up the side of the kettle. It's a pretty efficient way to get a good boil fairly rapidly. It works either with natural gas or propane. The firebox under the boil kettle is exactly, generally in our systems, is exactly the same firebox we use on the hot liquor tank. The hot liquor tank that we employ in our systems is 2 times the capacity of the brew house. So if you get a 7-barrel system, you're going to get a 15-barrel hot liquor tank. And the reason for that is that if you want to double batch in a day, you have ample water to do that. You also, because you're going to recycle part of that water through the plate chiller when you come out of the boil kettle, you're going to pump it back into the hot liquor tank and get yourself some extra hot liquor there. You can use that in the afternoon for keg washing and tank cleaning and other things. And generally, 2 times is a good place to start. We see a lot of breweries ask us to actually increase that to even 3 times the brew house capacity. If you're going to do a lot of production, you're thinking about canning and distribution, bottling, you're going to need more hot liquor than just 2 times. And running out of water is just a complete waste of time in the brewery. You're absolutely dead in the water. Any questions yet?
Yeah, feel free to chime in, guys, if you have any questions along the way.
Yeah, and when you guys do, I'd be psyched to hear where you're all from when you ask questions as well. Steam brew house, the heat source is a little different from a steam boiler. The steam boiler can be run either on electricity, There's some phenomenal electric boilers out there. They get big, they dim the lights in the neighborhood, but they're on smaller systems, great to use. And then either natural gas or propane fired boilers. The way steam works is, the essence of it is a little bit of physics here. The point where water vapor or water goes from vapor to steam, so it vaporizes, it builds up an enormous amount of energy. And when it may take a certain number of joules of heat to get water to go from freezing to boiling. From going to boiling, that quick phase change from boil to steam to the vapor stage takes us an enormous amount of energy just to make that one phase change. That's why what's the old adage? A watched pot never boils, or won't boil. That's why, because the watched pot is building up it's building up that energy in there. It's heating and heating and heating. It's holding itself at 109, 110 degrees, and suddenly it'll be able to vaporize. And when steam goes back from that vapor stage to liquid stage, it releases all that. The energy that it built, like 3 times what it would take to just go a few degrees the other way, or 5 times, whatever it is, and it depends on the pressure and your altitude and a bunch of other things. But when it releases that steam and turns it back into water, it puts all of that latent energy right back into your wort. So it's a really effective heating process. One steam boiler will run both the hot liquor tank and the boil kettle in your brew house. So, and it's quick turnaround, it's efficient, it is a more of a gentle boil on your beer. So a lot of the large breweries that make lagers are all steam driven. We are probably at this point, I would say about 60 or 70% of our breweries that we sell, and maybe even more than that, are steam brew houses, just because of the efficiency, and the brewers who are buying them really like the boil that they get out of that system.
Now you got a slew of questions, starting with Ryan. Significant price difference between natural gas or propane?
Okay, natural gas or propane, that depends on, okay, the system itself, the equipment, no difference whatsoever. The difference is going to be in your energy costs. So propane is going to be typically quite a bit more expensive than natural gas to run. And that's because you've got a delivery element. If natural gas is in your cities, if you're out in the boonies, you're going to have to buy propane, and you're going to pay for it. It's still generally a more efficient source than electricity, but that can vary as well. Okay, so Puerto Rico, you've got expensive electricity. I would say if your natural gas is reasonably priced, which you're in the Gulf, I'd imagine that you can get natural gas pretty easily. That would be the preferable source. Generally, I would say your number one source for heating is going to be natural gas. It's going to be the least expensive way to handle that, and especially with the way natural gas prices are right now.
But in the steam environment, so you're saying in steam it doesn't matter? You
can go propane or natural gas with steam. It's essentially the same burner that goes into the direct fire system is the burner that goes into the boiler. So you're either directly heating wort with a burner, or you're directly heating steam, which steam is going into the system and heating the elements inside the system in your wort at that point, or your hot water.
So that should answer it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jeff?
Wichita.
Electric brew house. You have one?
We do electric systems. I think we've sold maybe 2, and they're on the smaller size. I'm interested to know what size system you're thinking about employing the electric in. 7-barrel. It's a break point. I think they're effective at 3. I know there's a lot of 7-barrel electric out there, but once you start to get into that 7-barrel size, because of the really more your hot water element. I mean, you're talking about heating up, 400 gallons of hot water in your hot liquor tank. It becomes a little bit of a challenge to get that much water efficiently hot. The other problem with electricity is it'll stratify in your hot liquor tank, so you'll get a heated layer and a cooled layer, and you have to spin those all the time. So you have to pump your water. In either one, in the gas, or I'm sorry, in the steam system, that problem's completely eliminated. It can be a problem in the direct fire, but not so much as with electricity. I'm not going to tell you can't do it at 7-barrel. I know there's a lot of decent 7-barrel systems or good beers coming out of 7-barrel systems run on electricity, but I think that a lot of people that get into them are probably looking for an exit strategy once they start to get their electric bill.
Even with a steam boiler run with electric?
If it's a steam boiler run with electric, that's a different beast. Sussman boilers out of New York, they're our go-to for steam boilers. Awesome product. And they do require some electricity, no question about that, but they put out, they're efficient because they only turn on when you need steam. So it's like they're a steam generator unit instead of they don't house anything, and they don't house heat, they just pump out steam when you want it. So you're only paying your electric bill when they turn on to give you the power.
So would you say if you only really had electricity to work with, that your best...
At 7-barrel, yeah, I would do a steam boiler into an electric, electric steam boiler for 7-barrel. That's a really good system to go by.
Let's see. Then Colin's saying, how quickly would it take to heat 15 barrels to boiling temps with steam?
Okay. Boston. So with there's some engineering in the brew house. Our brew house has a Calandria inside of it. It's I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a Calandria. It's basically a submerged heating element that's in the middle of the boil kettle. We use the same heating element in the hot liquor tanks. It's a super powerful piece of equipment. If you look up Calandria, you're going to find some pictures online that have tubes inside a steam jacketed element. And ours is not like that. Ours is much simpler. It's akin to a pipe within a pipe. 15-barrel one, for instance, is like a 14-inch pipe with a 16-inch pipe on the outside of that, and it stands 24 inches tall. So it actually forces your wort around through the bottom of that and drives it up through the center, so you get a center boil to the outside with it. We also steam jacket the outside of the kettle. In that system, moving wort at 150 degrees from the mash tun, so it's leaving mash tun, going into the boil kettle, say at 150, you'll boil before you finish your knockout from the mash tun. So it's super rapid, very efficient system.
I guess Ryan, what's the minimum size for a steam brewing system, and is there noticeable water usage with it?
No. Okay, so minimum size is 3.5 barrel. We sell a ton of 3.5 barrel steam systems. They're just a great little system. You can go and look at the footprint of it online. And then the boiler itself doesn't really have any water use because it is a closed system, so it delivers its steam to the appliance where the steam is converted from vapor back to condensate, which is just water, heated water. The condensate then goes back to the boiler where it's turned into steam again, and it comes back and makes its loop into the system. So it drops its energy at the element where it wants to boil your wort or heat up your water, turns back to water, heads back to the boiler, and it just continues to loop like that. Occasionally a steam system will need maintenance. You might drain the water out of it. A lot of times steam systems, the first time it goes in, you treat that water. You want to remove calcium just to keep the boiler running cleanly. How much, say a 10-barrel system, you might have 200 gallons of water in the whole system, and it'll stay in there, ad infinitum until you dump it out and refill it. Okay, that's all the questions. Good. So anyway, back to this. Moving on, I think we've hit both steam and direct fire. Okay, so I got kind of listed out the advantages and disadvantages, and the good thing is you guys will get these slides later so you can kind of review them. Direct fire brew house is easy to install. Basically, you're hooking gas up to the boil kettle, up to the hot liquor tank, and at that point, a little bit of wiring, it turns on and goes. It's got lower maintenance costs. It can have lower maintenance costs than steam. I don't know if I agree with my slide on that one. You have the potential for caramelization. Some brewers like to get a little bit of caramelization going in their kettle. It's easier to do with the direct fire system because you actually have a heating source, which is flame, directly in contact with the steel, which is directly in contact with the wort. It's certainly more efficient than electric in most cases. I would even say, honestly, if you had the choice to go with either a small steam boiler, it's electric, or direct fire, I would probably guide you towards direct fire, but it would be interesting to look at what your energy costs are before you took that plunge. With direct fire brew houses, there's no way to heat the mash tun. You can do a decoction. We can set those up for decoction, but you can't actually heat the mash tun where with steam you have that ability. Not suitable for brew houses that are larger. That's true. I would say that once you get to 20 barrel, you really are looking at pretty much a steam system at that point. It makes just a lot of sense to head down the steam road. I think you'll find efficiencies of steam are such that over time it'll pay itself off against having to use natural gas to fire things. Let's see, direct fire. So we have a little 3.5 barrel brew house. The issue with that, now none of the other brew houses, 5 barrel and 20, require any kind of hood whatsoever, but on the small one, because this direct fire is actually open flame underneath, you have to use a type 2 hood in most municipalities to vent the gas, and really it's more about the carbon monoxide than anything else. Okay, so looking at the advantages of steam, super efficient to operate, scales to larger systems. So we have a lot of breweries that will come in and buy, for instance, a 15 barrel brew house and a 3.5 barrel brew house from us at the same time. They'll run both of those systems off one boiler. They'll also run their hot liquor off it, so you can keep adding things onto it until you exceed the boiler capacity. And moving up and getting a little bit larger boiler is not a big expense. The first mile is the biggest one. A boiler is not an inexpensive investment. The installation of a boiler is not an inexpensive investment. So plan in a brewery where you're going to put steam in, plan on spending more than in a brewery where you're going to use a direct fire system. The exception to that rule, I would say, is at the 3.5 barrel level. We have a really small, very neat boiler package that we sell with the system, because the cost of that small boiler and the cost of putting a type 2 hood in kind of wipe each other out. At the end of the day, you're almost in the installation on the boiler at the 3.5 barrel system is very, very marginal. You can kind of keep your costs almost exactly the same, I would say. And my preference would be go steam all the way if you got that, if you have the ability. Next thing, another advantage. Okay, so the mash tun is heated. So we recently changed our mash tun design. We're using an external calandria to heat the mash. So we're running our mash wort through a small, tall calandria. You can vary the temperature on that mash in one circuit anywhere from 1 degree to 40 degrees. It's, I guess for the home brewer guys, it's similar to having either a small Herms or some external heating element so that you can kind of keep pumping your mash temperature up. This is just an industrial size one. Super powerful. We use them on the 3-barrel systems also, and we can actually, there's a couple other things that are great about it. The 3-barrel system, once you're coming out of your mash tun with your wort and going to the boil kettle, you can spike the temperature by 40 degrees on the way there, so you can get up to 180 degrees and take some time off your boil. You can also stop your conversion very rapidly by putting the steam, really hammering the steam into the external calandria, and just shut down your conversion in your mash tun by heating up your wort. I kind of spoke about the ability to operate a test batch system. That's where you have a bigger system and a smaller one running off the same steam power source. And the heat control is pretty precise on the steam systems, whereas with a direct fire system, it's really on or off. It doesn't modulate. With steam, you've got valves, and so it operates more akin to your cooking stove at home, where you can put it on simmer and you can put it on full blast and anywhere in between. Disadvantage, obviously, I mentioned it's a little bit more expensive to install. On the larger systems, it definitely gets more complicated. There's more controls, and there can be a longer commissioning period, but it's, in my opinion, it's worth the effort at the end of the day. Good thing to educate yourself on the difference between the two of those and get out and see some breweries and how they operate. Okay, so yes, rims, thank you. Diving into the cold side, so glycol sizing is really an important piece of the pie. We want to know exactly what your glycol requirements are going to be. A lot of things go into that conversation. It's not just your fermentation tanks. Are you going to run your bright tanks off of the glycol? So a lot of times people will drop the bright tanks into a walk-in cooler. It's a really good way to handle it. But other breweries don't want to buy the walk-in because they're only going to have 1 or 2 bright tanks, so they're going to run those off of their glycol system. Those tanks are perpetually cold, so they take a larger load on your glycol system. Other thing to consider is, will you need a cold liquor tank in your brewery? If your water temperature in Phoenix is 80 degrees in the summer, you cannot get your wort down to 70 degrees where you want to have it for your pitching temperature. So you're going to have to do something about that. Typically what's done is you buy a cold liquor tank and you refrigerate a large quantity of water off of your glycol system so that you can use that to drop that extra 10 degrees off of your wort as it comes out of the boil kettle. The reason you do it like that is that glycol systems are susceptible to shock. So if you try to, let's say, cool your 300-gallon, or 30, your 10 barrels of beer coming out of your boil kettle with your glycol system, you'll spike the glycol temperature for a period of time until the unit can catch up again. That period of time might be 3 or 4 hours. As soon as you do that, you also heated up all of your glycol going to your fermenters. So you're going to whack, your whole brewery system is going to go out of whack for a little while. So you've got, the buffer is cool water, and allow that cold water to help you drop the temperature on your wort. Another nice thing to consider, or an important thing to consider about glycol, is having some redundancy. We sell a lot of G&D chiller systems they're sort of our go-to for glycol units, and they've got a couple of really nice options where it's a dual 5-ton system or a dual 7-ton system. And what that means is that you basically have 2 compressors, 2 chilling units, and the system will automatically bounce back and forth from one to the other. Say you can set the parameters, but say every 4 or 8 hours, it'll go from one compressor, shut down, use the other compressor. If you ever have one go out, you can rely on the first or second until you get the other one fixed. So redundancy, you think about the amount of money you have piled up in your tanks. To lose your glycol for 2 days and have all of that beer go bad is a catastrophe. Just a huge loss. So then we can talk about a little bit about the design and operation of a brewery tank. A fermenter, it's really nice to have the original slides back.
I know. Put them back next time.
I've got some other ones that can pop in. So a fermentation vessel, conical bottom, upright sides, wrapped with a jacket around the outside. In that jacketing, you're pumping glycol through. And in fermentation, you're going to be maintaining something slightly under 70 degrees, typically for your ales. And that glycol system and that tank work in unison with one another. So you've got a temperature probe, just like your thermometer at home. If the tank gets too warm, the probe is going to say, hey, you've reached 72 degrees here. It's going to send a signal back to the controller, which is just a little thermostatic controller. It's going to pick up that I need to drop the temperature on that, opens up a solenoid valve and dumps fresh glycol into those cooling jackets around the outside of the tank, and thereby lowers the temperature of the tank until it gets to the next set point, which would be under where you want it to be by a couple degrees. It shuts the glycol off again. Very simple design, a lot of important elements in there to make sure that that tank works properly, though. We just was writing up a blog on people who call us and tell us how a brewery tank is a brewery tank. I could give you a lot of references that would tell you otherwise. A well-made brewery tank that's fabricated and designed properly works wonderfully. Our tanks have baffling in them. You want to create as much turbulence in that glycol as it runs through the outside of that tank as possible. Those are all considerations on how that tank is designed. Where you put the manway on the tank is important too. We find people have preferences sometimes to side manway or top-mounted manway on a tank. We prefer to build them with a top-mounted manway, specifically because we don't interrupt any glycol flow around the outside of that tank by putting the manway in the side. It gives you much better control, much better cooling, even cooling on the tank than you'll get by putting the manway in the side.
Then you have to rappel down into the tank when you want to clean it.
Never enter the tank. Never. You've been in? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to do some like troubleshooting in there.
Yeah, not good.
Fun to step in a conical tank with rubber boots on.
Here, look, I do have a slide. So, yeah, there we go. So we have a slide. That's a fermenter.
Does that apply to the mash tun?
Pardon me?
He's asking, does that apply to the mash tun? Like the manways or the?
Mash tun side manway only. Yeah, that's for mash out. Yeah, I'll go back to mash tun for a second. Mash tun's a pretty important piece of equipment. Your efficiencies start in your mash tun. You want to. There are a lot of design considerations that go into it. You know, I would say the best thing to do is talk to the guys, my sales guys, and they can kind of school you up on what are important aspects of a mash tun. We have mixers that go into them. We've got rakes and plows that go into them. The false bottom considerations. There's a lot of different things that are super important that drive your efficiencies out of the mash tun and get you the best wort that you can possibly get. You kind of got to design the mash tun to your brewing style. Most of them are pretty similar, but there can be some variation for sure. Looking at the fermentation vessel here, so the ports on the right-hand lower picture, those 4 ports, those are where the glycol ports go in. What you see there is the dimple jacket around the outside of the tank. Does that thing point? Can they see?
Yeah,
that?
that,
Okay.
you can see that.
Yeah. So right there, you've got dimple jacket. That jacketing is like a pillow of glycol around the outside of the tank. It's about a 1/4 inch thick, and that's all it takes. When working with glycol, interestingly enough, volume is not what's important. What's important is flow and the speed of flow, because you're trying to get that change in temperature, the delta T, out of the glycol into the tank. We also put a section of cooling jacket around the cone. The reason you do that, especially in larger tanks, is you begin to get a yeast cake built up. You want to keep that yeast cool. Otherwise, you'll begin to lose it. It'll heat itself up. And if you're planning on harvesting the yeast, it's a great thing to have that. I think this is a pretty common design for a brewery tank, but one that should be adhered to pretty closely. It's a 60-degree conical bottom. You don't want to have a bottom that's less than 60 degrees, because when it's time to crash the tank, you want to make sure that you're getting the yeast drop down into the cone and you can harvest it effectively.
I think Ryan has a question about a dry hop port, or do you do it through the top manway?
When we build top manways, you'll hop right into the manway, and we also have often put hop hooks on the inside of the manway. Some brewers will hang a bag of hops from the manway directly down in, makes cleaning a little easier. I'll tell you another really interesting thing about manways, as we're talking about them, is the whole concept of shadowing in a tank. The only way to eliminate the shadow in your tank is to get the manway on top. A side-mounted manway is, and there are different designs on those side-mounted manways. There's one in particular that's in my head that I would say stay away from. That's the kind where you the manway slips into the side of the tank and you have to scrub around the bottom of it all the time. The better design is where the manway sits flush in the side of the tank, but you still have a manway under the liquid level, so you're going to pay some attention to that as you clean every time. The top-mounted manway, if it gets wet with CIP, you do not have a shadow condition, so you're never really going to spend time fussing with it. The interesting thing is, so a lot of the new brewers that we work with, they are 50-50. We get them into a top-mounted manway, and they love it after they get it, because literally they go up a few times, check the manway, see what they have to clean, find out they really don't have to clean anything, close it up, get down off the ladder, and they're good to go again. And after a while, they don't bother with it. The inspection is less routine.
I just wanted to clarify for some people who don't know, the shadowing you're referring to where the cleaning in place or the CIP ball is coming into the top of the tank on the left. The shadowing would be a zone where the spray of cleaning solution is not able to hit that portion, right?
Yes, that's exactly.
Does that make sense to everybody? So a shadow is a place where we're not getting proper cleaning from that spray ball.
Right. Yep. And your CIP fluid is going to usually trigger at about 150 degrees. That's why you have to have a lot of hot water in your brewery. But if it is physically able to touch all of the pieces in the tank, it will clean the tank. That's how that stuff works. It's caustic. It does its job. It does a phenomenal job of what it's supposed to do. But the places it can't get to, you can run into potential problems. So good tank design takes that into consideration, trying to minimize shadows. Grain management. So, depending on the size of your brewery, you're going to handle your grain in different ways. Everybody's got to deal with the outflow of grain, I think, about the same way. You're going to either get pre-milled, which is the most expensive way to buy it. You're going to pay. It's not going to be as fresh. You're going to be accepting the crack on the grain that you have gotten from the manufacturer. So you've lost some control in your brewing process when you do that. So it's sort of the worst of the three worlds in grain. It's the cookie cutter stuff, and you're not going to have a lot of ability to manufacture your grain inside your process the way you want to. What efficiency you get out of your mash tun is not going to be controlled by your grain milling. It's going to be controlled by how you mash in and how you treat your machination process. However, one of the biggest places that you can gain efficiencies in the brewery is being able to control your crack, because every beer and every style of beer that you're going to make is going to have some effect on how you want to crack your grain. So a lot of people will jump into bagged grain that is uncracked, put it through their own milling device, and then put it into their mash tun. Again, at a bagged level, you're still paying a premium for the grain. Your specialty malts, obviously, that's the way it's going to come, but your base malt, you're paying probably, 30%, 40% more, I think is the figure that I've been told. When you're going to bag versus having a silo. Silos are an investment. They're not an insane investment. If you're up around a 15-barrel system, I think if you're making probably 2,500 barrels a year, you are well within the range of looking at getting a silo.
I think they've already done the break-even analysis on that.
Did that come there?
We have a lecture on doing break-even on equipment.
Where did that come in? Am I wrong at 2,500?
Yeah, it can be 2,500. Depends what they're looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
What are transportation?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of different. Yeah, I agree. Can't call one brush. So, machination is the delivery to the brew house. Okay, so hydration happens we put a hydration port on the top of the mash tun. You're actually injecting water and having the grain drop down through this column of injected heated water, and that's hydration. You want to try and get as thorough hydration as you can on that grain on the way into the mash tun. It just makes your job a lot easier. If you don't have a rake and plow system, you're going to do a little bit of hand stirring, but that eliminates a lot of that. If you don't have an auger and a mill, which is where that that piece of equipment really comes in, you're more likely to be putting water in your mash tun and then just dumping bags of grain in. You're going to do a lot more stirring in that instance. You'll be looking for a way to get hydration figured out.
Yeah, you're not going to enjoy that for very long.
No. Yeah, so grain handling is a very significant portion. When you're thinking about laying out your brewery, and this is one of the funnest things that we like to do, is look at those original plans, where your overhead door is, where you're going to do your bottling, how you're going to get your grain into your brew house area, back out the door where it's going to be in 55-gallon drums that weigh about 500 pounds. It's stuff that needs to be considered, and it's surprising how many folks get into it and haven't thought that process through. You know, they've got some steps that they need to get up with these big buckets of wet grain, and you get into some pretty interesting conversations pretty early in the game about that. Okay, so interesting concepts here. Brew house efficiency, and there are a lot of different places you can measure efficiency. You can measure it at the mash tun, so you got your mash efficiency, and then you can measure your brew house efficiency, which are different numbers. You're going to measure one at the mash tun, you're going to measure the other one as you begin to take your wort out of the well kettle. It's a measure of the product in the brew house itself, and it's considered a percentage of the total potential theoretical yield that you can get from the mash that you're using in the mash tun. So you've got your sugars that you're putting in, how much sugar are you getting out at the end of the day? Those sugar contents are known for every grain. They're well established. You want to know where they are on the other side. You guys did homebrew, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The concept of brewery efficiency is one that really concentrates more on layout and equipment design. That is, for instance, a function of having the brew house facing the right direction. Do you have your Are you working through the brew house in a meaningful manner, getting back out of the brew house and directly close by into your fermentation vessels, or are you having to drag 80 feet of hose to get to your fermentation vessels? Huge difference between 15 feet and 80 feet. And those are the kind of things that we look at in brewery efficiency, because the efficiency that you build into your brewery or inefficiency, is something that you're going to deal with every single day. House efficiency you can work on. You can crack your grain differently, you can mash in differently, you can go about all kinds of different things to improve efficiency, and that's a long-term learning process to get yourself up to 92% efficiencies out of your brew house. Those are great places to be, but you don't get there overnight. Brewery efficiency, if you lay your brewery out right, and it's impossible to get everything right off the bat, we all know that, but taking into account the big aspects, how you're going to lay it out, how you're going to move product through the brewery, how you're going to bring your grain in, how it's going to get out. Those are the things that, well thought through, make a difference of whether you want to go in and brew beer every day or you don't want to brew beer every day, because it makes your life miserable or really fun. That's it.
Okay, everyone, now, oh, there's the question. John? Fermenting only a third of the tank?
Not really. Headspace in a fermentation vessel is, okay, I should take that back a little bit. Make sure that your glycol jacketing is in the right place, and that you want to talk to your manufacturer about that. Make sure that they're on board with doing it. As far as the tank itself, headspace, extra headspace in the fermenter is not, that's not a problem. Too little headspace is a problem, but not too much.
Yeah, good question. Oh, you might want to mention about if people want information, how they go about getting information about, because we don't have this email up here.
Yeah, sorry. Go to our webpage, portlandkettleworks.com. There's a bunch of ways to contact us in there. There's actually a section about building your brewery where you kind of are working through the process of getting financing, getting your space, and as you begin to take care of it. We just set the website up, so we're a little bit short on content, but you're welcome to go there. And Chris Sears is my sales guy who works on 3.5 barrel systems, and Joe Watzig works on 5 through 20 barrel systems. So one of the two of those guys is, depends on what you're looking for, the guys to speak with about it.
Okay. Any other questions? Everybody knows everything they want. Oh, can we come visit your business? Ryan wants to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you from, Ryan? Wait for him to answer this here.
Seattle.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Absolutely, love to have you visit. Let's see here.
Mike.
2 through 2 to 3 installments prior to the installation of the equipment. Is there room for negotiation and leave a percentage after installation? Generally, no. That equipment, when it leaves, I think you're going to find with most manufacturers, I think probably all of them, that as that equipment leaves, you need to be paid in full. I mean, at that point, we're way out over our skis as far as we've got a huge investment heading out the door. That's why it's important to check references on your you want to talk to people. Go and look at other breweries, find out how the commissioning process went. Were the manufacturers there when the problems came up? That's the big question, is when there's a problem, is there anybody there to help out? Problems occur, and in our business, if something goes wrong in your brewery, we drop everything and make sure we get you back online as soon as possible. That's the kind of commitment that I think you want to see. Yes, we do ship to Puerto Rico, no problem. Welcome.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. We will let you type then. We will sit here patiently.
Welcome.
You're welcome, Jeff. Well, we will post these slides so you can see them in more detail. It's a lot easier to see the details of the planning. What's a typical brewery size for a starting brew pub? The ones that you see.
How many seats are you thinking? Hate to answer a question with a question, but
Let's just say, let's give a 50 and 100 seat.
say, okay, so if you're 100 seats, I say 10 barrel, 50 seats, you could probably get away with a 3.5 at 50, but honestly, I would, beer is good, some growler sales, a little bit of bottling here and there, probably a 5 to a 7 barrel system works well.
What does they have? They
They have a 3.5.
Oh, then they have that other
They
big.
have a 20, yeah,
Big
for
system.
distribution.
Okay. Is the walk-in more efficient for lagering than pure glycol for tanks outside of the walk-in?
Well, I would say because lagering, I would say you'd want to glycol the lagering tanks almost all the time.
I would say that too.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to commit an entire walk-in cooler to lagering. And back in the day, they would commit an entire building to lagering. For instance, Oli.
Yeah.
I've been through their lagering, though, 7 stories tall, and it's all loaded to one side, but they refrigerated the entire building for lagering.
Yeah.
That's how they handle their lagering operation.
Yeah, most people I see just have a glycol tank for lagering.
Yeah. Yes, we go to 20 barrel systems.
20 right now. That's your cap. It's 20 barrel.
20 is our cap.
Do you have any intention of going bigger?
We will. Our biggest issue for us is our shop ceiling height. We can manufacture the brew house, but when you get into 30 barrel systems, people are wanting tanks that are 2 times capacity typically, and even 3 times capacity, and we cannot build a 60 barrel fermenter in our shop because our ceiling's not tall enough. It's good and bad. The nice thing is we've become really efficient at building and super experts at building smaller systems, which if you're looking for big ones, there are other guys out there that do that, but if you're looking at 20 barrel or under, especially the sweet spot for us is anything 3 through 20. We've got some really, really great equipment. Kristen's saying 50 to 100. Oh, okay, we answered that. All right, good. Yeah, 1,500 people.
So you've got a building size for a 15 barrel system, so ceiling height isn't crazy high, but you want a 3 by HLT. Can you build wide instead of tall?
Yeah. We've actually in San Antonio, Texas, we just commissioned a 15-barrel brewery in an 8-foot ceiling height.
Oh, God.
Yeah, crazy. On a mezzanine.
Well, let's talk about efficiency then.
Pure
That could be a little.
That's interesting. It's actually going to be fair. It's going to be efficient because they're packed. The other thing, I'll tell you something about efficiency. Work in a small space. Don't, if you know, you will expand yourself out to huge spaces if you don't need to, but small spaces can be really, really helpful for you to maintain efficiency. They force you to work in an efficient manner. And if you're not planning on a lot of growth in the future, the extra space isn't necessary for you. Small is good. BTU, for instance. I mean, you can put another rack of tanks in there. He'll be super tight, but he'll be super efficient when he works. You see a 20-foot piece of hose.
Yeah, it's a little compact place. Mm-hmm. Jeff wants to know, can you run lagers off the same glycol system as your ales?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. Every tank, you can select temperature per tank.
It's like a house with a thermostat system. Every tank's on the same, can be on a different temperature.
Yeah.
Can you build squat or shorter stubby? 30 barrel. I don't know. I think it's very hard, once they get too stubby, it's very hard to chill down the center core.
Yeah, let me think here. We did, in that brewery I was just talking about, Pearl, like I say, had a section of 10-foot ceilings. We put 30 barrel fermenters in there. We had to, in that case, eliminate the coned bottom, which is it's a sacrifice to the space constraint, but they get it. They know what they're doing. It was the only way they were going to get 30 barrel fermenters in there. Getting a squat 30 barrel, depending on your ceiling height, depends on how squat you want to get. We couldn't, at 10 feet, practically keep a cone on that tank. There's a point at which at a 60-degree cone, it doesn't matter how wide you go anymore. The cone just keeps growing, but the height of the tank never shrinks anymore. So there's sort of a physics equation there.
Yeah, well, we've pretty much reached the end of it. So if you have any more questions, I think it's probably best to go through the website.
Sure.
Great, you guys. Nice to see you all again after Thanksgiving. Well, see your words at least.
No problem. Thank you,
God's work, Sean says. Okay, guys, take care. And next week, don't forget, we're on Wednesday night with John. That's our last session. And John Harris from Ecliptic Brewing, who's going to talk about the relationship between a brewery and a restaurant. So, and some of the, financial balancing of that and, other issues more around the food and beverage environment. Right? Until then, take care, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck, guys.
Keep working on your projects.
Hope to hear from you.
Thanks, Thad.